Man, I just want to speak towards the nighttime truck drivers out there. Um, Me particularly, I'm just gonna. I drove when I was driving. Ain't no excuse for it, but I used to smoke pot. I ain't gonna lie. I met other drivers that did they own thing while they drove, but that ain't. I ain't bringing it up to make an excuse for me smoking pot and trucking. But I adapted to driving at night when there was less traffic out there on the road. And I guess it's just a confession of truck driving, nighttime trucking that some people probably won't even know about because I'm sure most truck drivers don't smoke pot when they drive. While there is some they probably do, because I did it. But I remember being out driving at night, 65, 70 mile an hour at night, especially in the wintertime when the roads be kind of bad. It was a lot of times where I was the only truck out there, you know. And I would be so high that whenever I park and I wake up, I wouldn't know where I stopped at. I would have, I'd bring out my phone and like Google, where am I right now? And she would name a city and town that I wouldn't remember seeing the night before when I was driving. And I look at my map or my road atlas, and I find that town, and I was like, okay, I don't remember the last 150, 200 miles. I don't remember this town at all. Pretty much the last thing I can remember would have been 200 miles before I got to that town. But it was Procter and Gamble. It was either in Lima, Ohio, or Maumee, Ohio. I think it was in Lima though. I got there one night, and they was on the level 3 state of emergency. And I didn't know what that was being from Memphis. Roads was real bad. And I kept constantly using my de-icer fluid on my windshield to try to break the ice up out my windshield. But it seemed like it was getting worse and worse the more I used it. Like my windshield wipers were making a just like a just ice on ice sound, like. And my whole thought process was the de-icer would help break the ice off the windshield. But later on, I found out the deal was so cold, the de-icer was freezing as it was on the windshield. So it was actually making the situation worse the more I used it. But had to be at Procter and Gamble by midnight. It was probably like 10:49, and I probably was about 30, 40 so miles away. So it was a doable load. I had the time to get there, but when I tell you the weather was so bad, I was driving maybe 40 mile an hour, 45 top. Like, it was bad. And I would, every 15, 20 minutes, I see a truck over on the westbound side. I was on the eastbound side. I think this was I-70. I-70 or I-80. I can't remember. It was some years ago, but I just know it was bad. And I'm late. I made it to Procter and Gamble. I think it was like 11:47. It was close. I was pushing on. They call it the dropping hook. So when they say you got to be there by 11:59, we'd run on military time. So you had to be there by 11:59, which would be pretty much by midnight. If you get there past midnight, it would be considered late. So I got there. I can't remember who I was selling on. I was with selling on. So this is about 2016, 2014, somewhere up in there. And so I got there, and when I went in to check in, the lady told me, she said, you're not supposed to be driving right now. Like, what do you mean? I had this load to deliver. She said, we're on the level 3 state of emergency. If you get caught driving, you can go to jail or something like that. I was like, wow, I had never heard of that ever. No trucking school taught me that. No company teaches you that in orientation. I literally had never heard of it until that moment. And so they allowed me to drop the load, but I was not allowed to pick up an empty trailer. So it's a drop and hook. So I dropped the load and I bobtailed out of there, which most truckers know bobtail means you ain't got no trailer. So I bobtailed out of there, and I remember going a GPS, like a grocery store or something like that, 24-hour grocery store or something like that. I think I found a place called Myers. This was in Ohio, and I found the place called Myers, I think it was called. And right down the street from it was a Pizza Hut. So I had got some pizza for the night. And I don't remember Myers being 24/7, but they were still open. They were open, I believe they were open. I don't even think I got out the truck that night to go into Myers, but I remember seeing cars in the parking lot, stuff like that. And long story short, yeah, drive sober, y'all. Because it can put you in a situation you don't want to be in. I kind of got away with that for the most part, not having major accidents, tickets and violations and overweights, and I was managing it, but it still wasn't an ideal way to drive. If yeah, it wasn't ideal. I don't like to stop and wake up and not know where I'm at. You know what I'm saying? It's not a good feeling at all. But that's just one of the very many things that I can remember about driving high, trucking high, and I don't recommend nobody do that. That's very unsafe. Trucking itself is already stressful and dangerous enough without the drugs. And some drivers I met smoke alcohol. I mean, I say smoke alcohol, drink alcohol. Some I've met older drivers. So, asking me if I had sold crack or something. Like, no, I don't got no crack, bro. But the fact of it is, so a lot of the older drivers, not all of them, but you'll see that a lot with the older drivers. They were getting, some of them were getting high out there trucking. And I wouldn't put it past some of the newer drivers, because people are people. Anybody can be susceptible to getting high at any time, on any drug, you know. So just be mindful of that if you're a truck driver. Just try to keep your system clean, try to do the job sober and with a clear mind, the way I was initially doing it until I started smoking pot. Because I didn't start trucking smoking pot. I was taking it serious. And like I said, we can throw a million excuses out there, for why we chose to do what we chose to do. But in the end, it's still a poor decision, still a poor choice, So, yeah, that's all pretty much wanted to say in this video, though. I don't think I never told people about that, you know. All right, Credible C, tuning out.